Hello! Welcome to the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast, where we dive into the connection between the land, the sea, and us. Here, field stories reign supreme and life experiences are divulged. I'm your host, Kara Muzia. Let's dive into today's episode. Have you heard about my free program, Back to Nature? Getting outside is vital to our health and the health of our planet. The cool part is, to reap the benefits, you only need a few minutes a day. This course is designed to be fun and easy to do, and perhaps spark an adventure or two. Click the link in the show notes to get started today, or visit karagracemuzia.com. Hello, mermaids, pirates, ocean lovers, and land lubbers. Welcome to today's show. Why is the boat always getting great deals? It loves a sail. Why did the boat break up with the anchor? It got too clingy. Captain Mermaid Professor Holly is how Holly Buresh's niece very aptly describes what her aunt does. A graduate of Eckerd College, a wilderness first responder, 100-ton captain's license holder, and marine science teacher, Holly certainly has charted her own path in life. Her journey takes us from the American Midwest down to Florida, over to the Bahamas, and out on the high seas, where the closest other person was in the International Space Station. In today's episode, Holly shares her winding path, how bonefish in the Bahamas affect people in Nebraska, and the importance of saying, I don't know. She also has a great ask at the end, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Please enjoy. Welcome to the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast. I am really excited to chat with you today.
Thanks for having me.
How does a landlocked girl growing up with no ocean just totally dive in and become, put so many sea miles under your belt? How do you go from no ocean to that's all you do?
Ask questions. I was always a really curious child, and I always loved the science. I love nature. Give me any documentary because it transported you somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And I always started to kind of push towards those ones that were in the water, whether it was a lake, whether it was the ocean. And also, I was fortunate to grow up not too far from Lake Michigan. So anyone that grows up around a lake or around one of the Great Lakes knows that's a huge body of water, and you cannot see across it for the most part. And that really draws in the question of, when you can look to the horizon and all you see is water, how can you not have questions about it? I also like to laugh at the fact that I feel like, being a Midwesterner, it's kind of a perfect transition to being on the water, because neighbors can be a mile away. You have nothing but field or ocean for as far as the eye can see. So I'm it translates really well in my brain.
I love that. You take the log cabin in the woods and you just transfer that to a cabin on a boat in the middle of the ocean.
Exactly.
That's fantastic. So did you spend a lot of time on the Great Lakes growing up then?
No.
Okay.
So my time was mainly spent on the shore and running around the dunes and, getting your feet in the water and swimming a little bit, but I was never really involved in any water sports as a kid.
So what made you decide, I want to study the ocean? This is what I want to do.
Well, I was fortunate to grow up in a family that definitely, when we said we wanted to try something or we wanted to learn more about this, they were supportive in those efforts. As long as we were working hard in school and doing the best we could there, if we wanted to try a sport or a new activity, we were encouraged with it. So my love for marine science coming about and wanting to get into the ocean and study it was made possible by having a support system of not just family, but also teachers and friends that were encouraging of trying to chase these cool dreams. And I think once I realized that it was something that is achievable and it was tangible, and it wasn't, you had to be this tall to ride, or you had to look like this or have this much money, that it made going for it a lot easier, and at least trying to figure out what path was going to work for me.
Yeah. Was there a particular path that you wanted to go down with the marine science? Like, was there a particular topic that really drew you in that you're like, I want to go for this? This is initially what prompted your journey?
Oh, that's a tough one because I'm a very excitable person and I'm like a consistent hype woman for anyone I meet. So I may not know what you're talking about, but you could get me excited about it. And then all of a sudden now I want to go learn more about that and study that. So really the things that got presented to me. So I loved all the like stories of ecology, but most of it was related to creatures that were land-based and terrestrial. And so like can this translate into the water side of the world? Like how can you have this community that's a forest and relate this to a community that's a coral reef system and all the different species that interacted with it? So I think first I really liked the interaction, the ecology side of how do things function together. And from then it started. I went in thinking that there were maybe 100 things that I could do studying marine science, and then that exploded, and my brain couldn't comprehend all the different directions I could take. And so I definitely had to be like, okay, whoa, hold on. What do I want to try here? What's next? What do I take a look at? What do I explore?
Yeah. Yeah. It is funny. It's analysis paralysis, right? Like we can all get, it's either like excitement about certain things, and sometimes it translates to overwhelm, or it can just start with overwhelm of like, look at all these choices and I have to make one to start
Yeah,
with. Like you don't have to stick with it, but you will have to pick one to start with and then go from there.
it's so tough.
I saw that you studied bonefish during your college years and you have sea turtle experience and all of the things. What was kind of like the stepping stone path for you there?
College was a great step for me.
Yeah.
I know it's not for everyone, and I was definitely one that benefited from the college setting. And I went to Eckerd College, which is a smaller private liberal arts school in Florida, and I benefited from the size of classes and being able to know my professors and be hands-on when it came to like lab work because if we needed salt water, it was directly from the bay right outside of the building that was off of the campus beach,
Mhm.
which was a blessing to be able to have like the resources there to kind of show you that these things are possible and can happen consistently. And then after college, I was really struggling to try and find like what's this next job going to be or internship. And I found a position working at Cape Eleuthera Institute, also known in association with the Island School on Eleuthera in the Bahamas. And that was yep, this is why I got my degree. This was like the validation I needed to like say, no matter what, I'm a marine scientist. Like, I love this because that was studying bonefish. And that was half of it was focusing on populations of bonefish, Albula vulpes, for any of those that want the scientific name. But beautiful species, really known for fly fishing. Like a lot of sport fishermen will be like, that's one I need to get. And it's only a catch and release fishery.
Mhm.
So folks are catching them, taking their cool picture with them, unhooking them, letting them go back into the water.
Mhm.
Now, the cool part about bonefish is that they were bringing in more money to the Bahamian economy than the top three exports combined.
Hmm.
And so I kind of went from just looking at this animal and like thinking of it of, okay, we're going to put an incision, we're going to insert a tracker and do our little fish surgeries, and then we're going to track them around to how does this impact like my grandparents in Nebraska?
Mm.
Like, how does this impact like humans in a way where anyone can understand, even though I'm the sole marine scientist in the family?
Yeah.
And that really became the connection point that I loved. I loved being able to tell people why stuff was important. Like, why should they care about this fish that I'm working on? Because it does have an impact on us and how we're able to interact with the world around us. And like money does talk in that sense. And so when you could put the scientific impact of one species and kind of show that there's a dollar amount value to why it's important to protect it, that was really cool. And I wanted to try and find more things like that that I could share, whether I was doing the research on it or someone else was doing the research on it, because anyone can benefit from seeing that there's purpose in what the work is that they're doing, that others can feel that impact from.
Yeah, I love that. So what did you tell your grandparents? Did you have that conversation of like, this is the value of bonefish and Cape Eleuthera has to you here in Nebraska?
Yeah. I remember having that kind of conversation with them because I mean, if you look at pictures, of course, yes, we're in swimsuits and enjoying this beautiful water. And like the Bahamas is just so picturesque.
Mm-hmm.
But I went in to talk about like, well, what does that mean for tourism in Nebraska? Like, I know most people are laughing at tourism in Nebraska, but then like you look, there was a campaign in Nebraska for tourism, and its catchline was Nebraska. It's not for everyone. And like they did a great job with that campaign. And so it kind of just turned into like, well, if you want people to come and visit these areas and you want like the economy to be built off of like those visiting a place, it needs to have an understanding of the impact of it. So you don't want people coming into like your hometown and causing a muck and not really worrying about what is that hometown and what are they known for. So it's kind of, it was into the like mutual respect of it. Like if you want where you are to be respected by anyone coming into it,
Yeah.
then all spaces deserve that, especially the ones that, you know, can kind of have that overproduction of people just coming there and not really taking that moment to like make that area a better place and make that area healthier, like not bringing your garbage there and all that kind of jazz.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, putting a value, like a monetary value on a fish is so helpful. It's like one of the things that drives tourism here in Florida as well, and like the diving industry. And it honestly helps drive legislation to protect fish, because money does talk and we do live in a capital society. And it's really hard for us to kind of wrap our brains, not all of us, but it's hard to convince policymakers that there's more value than just the monetary value, because money talks, particularly in politics, unfortunately. So yeah, it is really great to be able to have those numbers, and you get those numbers by tracking and doing the science and talking to the fishermen and all the things that you did. So how did you make the jump from, okay, I am having a great time in the Bahamas, to now I'm going to get my captain's license. I'm going to go work on these boats. I'm going to go not be on an island. I mean, an island, but a floating one built by man. Like, how do you make that leap?
Oh, goodness. I think I just kept moving forward, and it's what happened to be in front of me. So when I was working in the Bahamas, I found an opportunity to get an AmeriCorps position at the Georgia Sea Turtle Center on Jekyll Island, working as the marine debris member. And so the other half of the research I was doing in the Bahamas was focused on plastic pollution. And we would take like these lovely nets, put them on the surface of the water and troll them along for a little period of time, and then try and calculate how much plastic we were finding in just sea surface water.
Yeah.
Which is astounding, and a whole rabbit hole.
What size were you finding?
What was the biggest size in those trawls?
Yeah. Like, I mean, what was the size range? I know a lot of people think about plastic in the water and you think like a plastic bottle or bottle caps, and that's like the really easy visual, but a lot of the times it doesn't look like that. So what were you seeing?
Oh my gosh, no. It's like the island of trash is not like just water bottles and random things. Like we would occasionally find like fragments of things we could identify, like something such as a bottle cap or part of a wrapper, but most of it was fibrous. And most of it was based off of fishing gear, essentially. So if you think about fibers coming from synthetic ropes, nets, that kind of material is pretty prevalent. But then also things that had been photo degraded. So whether or not they were a container that was holding bleach, or whether or not that was like some dried up buoy that was made out of plastic, we'd find a lot of like plastic fragments within those bits too. But ranging from anywhere of like maybe something you could hold in your hand to fragments that if I was lucky, I could pull apart with tweezers and be like, no, look, this is plastic. Okay. It
Yeah.
was a tedious process for that. And
Yeah.
beyond that, we went through the stomach content of sport fish. So we'd look at mahi, wahoo, tuna, whatever we could get a reel into, and we'd go through the stomach contents there. And
Mm.
oh my gosh, same types of plastic that you find, but it would just be so insane to see. I think I did around like 270 some stomachs while I was there. And I think we came up with 34% of them had a minimum of one piece of plastic in it.
Jeez.
So I really became passionate about that because it was definitely one of those human impact things. It was definitely one of those where I could be a really good advocate for why maybe you don't want to use single use and like, yeah, bring your reusable water when we're
Mhm.
doing this, or try and like keep a set of silverware in the car for when we want to like have a random snack on an outing.
Mhm.
But by having that passion come on the marine plastics and marine debris side, finding this role in Georgia, I was super excited because not only was I going to be continuing on with that plastic pollution research, but I was also going to be working with volunteers and I was going to be working with the public and at the hospital, working and helping out with husbandry and sharing the message of what the place was doing. So I really enjoyed talking to people
Yeah.
about what they could do to make an impact. And that was a really good step for me. And so I got a lot of experience getting to talk and getting to organize citizen science and getting to, push forward with research and try and expand the research beyond this person is making an impact by being in the water, doing the trawls, collecting the data, and doing the analysis. Because props to all the science friends that are in the analysis world, because it is no simple feat, and I will leave it to them. And it was also really cool to kind of reach out to those that were trying to do it and reach humans. So, like the Cora Ball that the Rosalia Project does to like put in your washer and dryer to help remove plastic from getting into the water through the systems there. Like, I loved the human connection there. So, I got an opportunity to do a lot of that research. And as that was an AmeriCorps position, I just happened onto a job board that mentioned other AmeriCorps jobs. And there was one as a deckhand educator on board a 127-year-old schooner called Roseway that was run by World Ocean School, a nonprofit organization. And so I thought I was kind of crazy applying for this job. Like, truly, why would someone sign up to live on a boat for a year when they've never sailed a day in my life? Like, someone would say that grab the halyard. I like grab a water bottle. I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. This is a whole new language. It was baffling, but went through the interview process for that. And then here we go a couple of months later, getting on a plane to get on a boat based down in the US Virgin Islands.
I love that. I did listen to your story about how you got that job and you were like, so I've never sailed and like you didn't check every single box that they wanted. And this is something that I tell people a lot is like, even if you don't check every box, it doesn't mean that you're not qualified. Like
Oh
there
my gosh,
those
no.
are those like all the boxes on there are a wish list and they're looking for at least some of them to be checked, not all of them.
Exactly. And that was one of those things that, like, I mean, I consistently fight with myself of am I qualified or am I not qualified because I've done this, but I haven't done that. But
Mhm.
with the sailing side of it, you don't know what you don't know. Even if I grew up sailing on smaller boats in Lake Michigan, I still didn't sail on that boat that I was just starting to work on. So there's no way I was going to know everything about it. And I've always had a competitive side, like playing sports and in that realm of it, to where I love learning and I learn well when it's like a physical action. Like I need to move my body over to here to grab this line to pull it this way.
Yeah.
And like you have to work with other people to make it work because good luck raising 2,000 pounds of a sail on your own. Like It's going to take a long time and be pretty ineffective. Might be a great workout,
Yeah.
but needless to say, it was one of those that naturally kind of fit to, like, anyone that's willing to learn something is going to be able to learn something.
Yeah.
Like, especially in this day and age, there's so many ways that you can learn and so many opportunities to where, why would you put yourself in the I can only do these things because I'm only qualified for these? So it was a stretch, but I was so happy I made it.
And you're still, everything that you've learned from that and gained from that experience still carries you through today.
Absolutely.
So, what was it like living on a boat for a year with people that you had never met, never sailed before?
It is not for everyone. However, it is something that I wish everyone had the chance to experience, even if it was for a short period of time. It was one of those experiences to where, like, when you're on a ship, that is your home base. So if you're calling in sick from work, you're still at work. Like, you're in your home environment, but you're at work. And so you kind of bridge that gap of, like, you're rooming with all of your coworkers, and on a ship, you call them your shipmates. But you also really get to learn a lot about respect, and you can't really hide yourself. You naturally become the most genuine version of you, which I think is a beautiful aspect of that, because you're not worried about, like, trying to hide this, or I need to talk like this when I'm by this person because I need to put myself up here. It's like you learn that the raw, organic version of you, who is just trying to handle sail at 2 o'clock in the morning to get out of a storm, like,
Mm,
they don't care what you sound like as long as you're communicating well and getting the job done and everyone's staying safe in those beds. So it's one of those trying environments that I think is such a fantastic environment for folks to learn in, because it's a judgment free zone. It's
yeah.
not a consequence free zone. Like, it has very real consequences living on vessels of any kind and being on the water. But in order, when it's functioning at its best, like, it is a judgment free zone to where what you're doing gets to be the best version of you. And if it's not, you have people there that are supporting you.
Mhm,
And if other people are having bad days, you're supporting them. And it's
mhm.
all about getting the ship to function in its perfect little ecosystem in the safest way and best way possible.
There's something to be said for living in discomfort or putting yourself in uncomfortable situations because you really find out what you're made of, and that and you usually find out that you're capable of a lot more than you think. And this really epitomizes that because yeah, there's no like backup plan when you're on a boat. Like
No,
you have to handle it.
exactly. And there might be, the perfect list of this is what you do if this happens. But sometimes that's not going to work for you dealing with the issue in this way. Like, there's so many ways to accomplish doing one task. And sometimes it depends on who's the person that has been given the role to take care of that. And sometimes it depends on how much time that person has to take care of it. Some things could be like we're taking our time for everyone to learn this and do it together. And some of it is, we need to do this as quickly as possible so nobody gets hurt because of the conditions we're in.
Yeah.
And both of those things are done in different ways, but with the same, like, conceptual idea of how you're going to handle that situation.
Yeah. Well, you must have enjoyed it because you signed up for a lot more sailing after this.
I did. It was a really cool experience because I got a rounded perspective of what it was like to be a professional mariner. So I got to do the multiple trips a day where, like, some of them were school programs, maybe one of them was just a cruise to get public on the water and teach them about what we do with hopes that they want to support us as a nonprofit. And then the other aspect of voyaging where, okay, we're just going to plan to get ourselves from point A to point B, and dealing with all of the things that could happen in between, like what could go wrong in the engine room to where we have to shut down engine and we're just kind of floating, or this storm system has come in and we made it 100 nautical miles north, but we just got blown 75 of those back down south. And well, we need to get here because we're almost out of provisions and need food. So that voyaging component of like was so fun. And I mean, at some points we're closer to the US space station than anyone on the planet.
Mm.
And I had a hard time fathoming that, but I'm like, okay, there's people in the US space station and there are no boats within this radius. So we're closer to people in space than we are on this planet.
That is a wild concept to wrap your brain around. I'm trying
And
to right now.
it's so cool to like think
Yeah.
that like humans are cool. We try some pretty neat things and get to accomplish them. But after the voyaging side of it, then you go into shipyard, which is long days, dirty days, working with random tools that you may have never had training with before, but now you're getting training with it, learning new vocabulary, because that's everything about the work environment is new vocabulary and adding on to knowledge that is specific to the trade.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really loved that period because it went into the details. Like, great, when I was voyaging, I knew where the backup thingamabobs were, but how do I know when to order those backup thingamabobs? How do I know what I need, how much, how to get like those systems set up and ready to go? And then we also got to do week-long programs with students, which were great because little mini voyages, kind of like sprints, they felt like. And then we got to do long, like 3-month long voyages with students on board, which would also incorporate a voyage into it. So, you know, getting onto all of these different assets, and you're working with adults while you're on a ship, but you're also working with like young adults and kids.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone kind of has to function the same and know that there's like this order of operation that you go in. Like there's a hierarchy on ships for a reason. That's why, you know, you start with your captain and start working your way down.
Yeah.
And just because, you know, deckhand might be the title that's at the bottom of that hierarchy doesn't mean that a deckhand doesn't have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
So like many a times, like myself when I was a deckhand, or even like my fellow shipmates would see something that looked wrong or notice something that was a bit off, and they'd say something, and then all of a sudden, boom, that was the high priority because it was a big deal. So it was also this environment that like you realize everyone's voices matter. And just because you're at the bottom in the roles of responsibilities doesn't mean that you don't have a say in what goes on and that you can't speak up for the betterment of the ship itself.
Yeah. It's a really good point. I mean, in life in general, right? Like see something, say something to that whole effect, because oftentimes we kind of see things that other people may not observe, or people that have power, right, may not see, particularly if you're on a boat. Captain may be doing 500,000 other things, and they're not going to notice if like a shackle's about to break and like the sail's about to go, you know, but a deckhand would, and then it becomes a priority.
Exactly. And it's important to see that it's an environment that I love because everyone has value.
Yeah.
Like everyone has value in the functioning of a vessel, no matter what their role and responsibility is on the boat. And if someone wants to argue that, I have plenty of people that would stand behind me and like have those conversations of like, no, they are important. I promise. Like their voice is very much so a necessary thing in here.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite group that you like to work with when you were on the boats? Like, or, you know, did you like the week stints better than like the longer voyages, or was it just kind of all like a mixed bag of fun?
Oh, every aspect of it is so fun. I feel like when you have a day program or even a week-long program, you're always wanting more. You want to interact with that group more and more. And so it's sad when they leave. But even when you have a 3-month-long voyage and everyone, if you're in 3 months of all sharing essentially the same toilet, you're going to get close. And so like, you know so much about these people, and it's like it's almost hard to leave it. You found this like new family, new support system, and oh, it's so hard. I don't know. I have been fortunate to like still stay in contact with my shipmates and students who are now shipmates, and from all walks of those different styles of programming. And yeah, it's hard to say. Some of my best friends I've only sailed like 2 times with on a boat. And some of them we've lived together for a year on a boat. So it can really vary. And that's what also is neat because every experience isn't the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really important thing for folks to understand when they're trying to do different things and like pushing themselves out of their comfort level. Like I've had some of my stints on different vessels to where, yeah, they weren't as good as my other stints on other vessels. And I didn't, maybe like certain aspects of that as much as others. And they kind of turned me away from wanting to continue on into the maritime industry.
Mm.
But to know that that's not everything, like there is still variety and you still can kind of find that sweet spot into where you can exist in that world.
Yeah. Makes total sense. So you were on the boats for a long time and you ship hopped. And I mean, what was the total length? It was a few years, right?
Oh yeah.
What what made you decide to be a little bit more land-based?
Well, it's been with the kind of growth of the roles that I've had on the vessels.
Mhm.
So most of mine have been learning how to be a better merchant mariner merchant mariner while being on vessels, because if you're on a boat, you need to learn something about that boat, even if your role isn't like to be the engineer or to be the mate or the captain or anything like that. But my roles have been more heavily focused on the education side of things.
Mm.
So with my marine science background, oh, it's a playground of things that I can talk about. And I mean, on the most recent vessel I was on, I remember there was a day where I was just grinding and getting computer work done and, communicating with schools and students that are coming to do programs. And then my engineer comes up to me and he's like, "You need to come down to the engine room." I was like, "Okay, sure, fine. What's going on?" "Well, we're bringing in seawater through the systems on the vessel to provide cooling. So whether it's to the main engines or generator, HVAC systems, whatever you have. And so we're looking in one of these filters and there's fish." So it just turned into like, all right, well, we got marine science in the engine room right now happening. And like the science component of it, not just being marine biology focused, where it's about a certain species, but being marine science as a whole. So how is going to be anchored up with 8-foot waves and heavy wind pushing against the hull of the ship going to impact, as opposed to being anchored up in like crystal calm clear water?
Mhm.
Like that plays a role in your systems and the wear and tear that we're getting. So like getting the physical science, getting the like just general science, not even looking at marine, like it's all there.
Yeah.
And I really loved getting to communicate that. And like, how can I cover chemistry? Well, if there's steel on a ship and it's rusting, that's an oxidation reduction reaction.
All right.
Like that is science that is happening. And why are we, you know, maybe taking like this mallet or XYZ tool to like chip away that rust? And then why are we taking this product, this chemical, and coating that? Why are we
Mm.
using this paint instead of that paint for these things?
Mhm.
So it just kind of became this playground to where everything that we had to work on and maintain to the vessel and every issue that popped up that we had to analyze at that moment, you could see it from a scientific lens and you could see it from the like, this is how the building block setup looks, to where it's fun because oxidation reduction reaction, not many people understand that. Rust, a lot of people understand rust. Some people have had to work on it, some people have only seen it, but like it's one of those to where you can hit an audience of like young kids with
Mhm.
like, that's rust, that's not rust, and they'll understand. But you can also hit that with a group of adults that are experts in their own field but
Mhm.
don't work in that environment, and they're going to be able to do it. So you can really communicate throughout that broad scope what the science is that's happening on board and why what we're doing with this matters,
Yeah.
whether it comes to, just working on the vessel itself or maintaining the integrity of the maritime trades as a whole. So I loved the science component of it, and it really drew me forward. And with that, it also put me into roles to where I was speaking a lot more and being a little bit more on the advocate side and development side. So I started working with our crew and training our crew. So I wasn't the person that had to teach these things, but that they could feel comfortable in how they were using their voice to train others, because it's hard to say that your role is as an educator if that's something that people don't feel confident in their voice with. And they're like, well, I don't know everything. So what if a student asks me something and I don't know? You get to say, I don't know.
Right.
Let's ask another person, or let's see if we can figure that out. And that is probably one of the fundamental best lessons that you can teach someone in that environment, is that you don't know. And it's okay that you don't know, because everyone is trying to learn these different things. Like sometimes a deckhand might know something that the captain doesn't know, and vice versa. But that's healthy, because everyone has had to learn in their own way. And although it can feel like it's a standardized process of like you learn these skills and these skills and these skills, sometimes just pure experience about what has happened to folks in that time sets up that foundation to be like, here is what I'm open to, and here's my knowledge base that I'm bringing into the conversation. So working with crew to feel comfortable finding their voice to explain what they're doing and be able to teach that and translate that, whether it's the younger age students or the older age students, because we've had 70-plus-year-old students on board vessels, and we've had like 5-year-old students on vessels. And I mean, don't even count the little kids that come on board that are just asking random questions and you just impromptu start telling them.
Yep.
And with my, and I have always enjoyed that part, and getting folks excited about what they're doing and excited about sharing their voice of it. And it translated into me kind of taking that more sit on my hands, watch what they're doing, let them take the reins of it, and then come in and assist as needed, like kind of just keep throwing people alley-oops so they can keep succeeding and pushing what they're trying to teach and the projects they're trying to get done. And from there, I've really fallen in love with the communication side of things. And so the landlocked side of Holly right now, which probably won't be landlocked that much longer, because that's how it goes when you're a mariner. You can't really stay away from the water that long. But where I found a sweet spot is in assisting folks that honestly, sometimes I look at like myself. I had almost 1,000 days of sea time.
It's impressive.
And I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what credential I needed. I didn't know what I qualified for, what I should do if I wanted to work in this. And I mean, I was fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of folks that wanted to give advice and support, but I noticed that a lot of the advice and support I was getting was different. And so I didn't know what to do, and I felt super confused, because some of these things you only need 180 days to get credentials. And so I had way more time than I needed to like move on with this process. And fortunately, there was a company called MMCs with MM-SEAS that helped guide folks along getting their credentialing process for their merchant mariner credential. So I worked with them to get mine, and then to upgrade mine, and to get a better understanding of what is all this paperwork, because I feel like I need some sort of degree to understand this at point. But it also took away from me being able to effectively and with the most impact get my job done. So it was a really great resource for me to be able to use. And I know a lot of folks that sometimes they don't do it because they don't understand. So why would I go ahead and work on getting this credential? Because it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Well, talk to people that it does make sense to, like use resources in that world. So I've really loved being able to connect folks to having access to the water, truly, because that's what it is about. Like nothing is sadder than students feeling like they didn't belong on the boat because they didn't have money, or because their family is scared of the water, or because they never learned how to swim and something like that. But realizing that they might have a love for this, and this might be a place that they want to take their career into. And with the understanding that in the maritime industry, like some branches of it, you can be making a really good amount of money that for some could be a generational wealth changer. And so to be able to like provide access to an opportunity that some people didn't know existed for them, I think is so exciting because you don't know what you don't know. And that doesn't mean you're stupid. That doesn't mean someone doesn't love you and isn't trying to help you. That just means you don't know. They're trying to provide that access point to folks being on the water is really big for me. And it's really important just because I'm also starting to work with the Voyagers Club, which owns and operates a research vessel.
Mm.
And so when you're doing research and you're on these vessels, you're also trying to bring awareness to the natural environment that is the ocean and lakes and rivers and, you know, all that H2O we have. And I love that component that when you get folks to have an understanding of the maritime industry while being on boats, you innately also kind of build this or this understanding of the sustainability and the health of the oceans and why certain laws and regulations are in place.
Yeah.
Because you do have to dump things off the boat every now and then. Like if we're all sharing one toilet on a boat for a period of time, that stuff has to end up somewhere. And so there's laws and regulations as to when that stuff gets, you know, pumped off because you're on the dock and you can suck it into a land source for it, or if you're 100 miles offshore and having to put that there, but understanding what can go into those systems. So I really love the idea that you're putting people in this water environment while also having to create a little, like innately creating this scientific backing and understanding of system or of sustainability and care and thought that you have to put towards the environment.
Yes. One of the things that you had brought up in a previous podcast that I really liked was like not everybody that comes on your boats is a marine scientist if they're an adult or will aspire to be one. And I know that about my listeners as well. And the moral of the story is you don't have to be a marine scientist or work on the water even to appreciate the ocean and to do things that help preserve it. The point is to have that respect for it. And I love that you bring that up and you really instill that with your students and everybody that walks on board one of your ships.
100%. Respect is so fundamental. And sometimes on the vessel, we talk about like, what are our community values?
Yeah.
Like, what is going to be important for all of us as individuals to have an understanding of values? So we're respecting each other.
Yeah.
And no, you don't need to know everything. It would be completely inappropriate for someone to say they know everything. Like that is a sure way for me to be like, okay, like I'm questioning what your thought process is here. But like to not know is the exciting part. It was exciting because that means that you have more things that you can learn. And that might mean interacting with others. That might mean a good book to read or a podcast that you can listen to, or conversations. So I love that. You can't know everything about it, but you don't have to be the expert. Nobody has to be the expert in these things. And so I love that that environment really sets it up because nobody is the expert in everything.
Yep.
And everyone gets to add their bits in here and there. So especially folks that, if anyone is listening to a podcast called So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist and isn't like a little hooked by what that story could be, whether or not they can understand every facet of organic chemistry or they know all the taxonomy of fish, like it doesn't matter.
Right.
Like there's already this like innate draw to that environment that I think in just creating those conversations, you foster a really healthy environment around you and around what folks can do to better their environments.
Yep. I often think that, I mean, if it's on their hearts and in their minds and dreams to become a marine scientist or a mariner or like work on the ocean, like, yes, absolutely go for that. But I think one of the most powerful ways to help the ocean is to actually look around where you currently are and see what changes can be in place. Like I hear from people that are in the medical industry a lot. And I think that a lot of the lessons and the respect from the ocean can translate and it kind of needs to be brought into other industries as well. So again, all the people that come on your boats that may or may not actually become marine scientists in the future, and they still take it with them.
Exactly. It's really hard to have an experience with the ocean that is like so near and dear to one's heart and then let that disappear.
Yeah.
And that's what really is amazing, because it is a connecting environment. Like, you do reach out to those people in this random moment, and that story pops up when people are like, what's the coolest thing you've seen? And you're like, this one. Oh, I remember this. This just popped into my head.
Ask me tomorrow. It will probably be different.
Exactly.
I love that. So at the end of each episode, I have a series of questions that I like to ask. And the first one I'd like to ask you is, if you had a blank check, unlimited funding for any project or projects up to 3, what would you use the money for?
Oh my gosh. Whew. Well, having been on boats for the last like good chunk of time, they are not cheap to operate by a long shot. By a long shot. So when it's some researchers, some scientists that are reliant on getting on the water to get to certain like depths of water so far offshore, I would love to be able to like cut the check that goes, here, we're going to fund this boat for research to happen on it every single day that it is capable of doing that. Like, that would probably be an amazing impact, because then the folks that are trying to run the vessel get to really focus on what they're running the vessel for. Everyone wants to like create this world of discovery and exploration and like sharing knowledge and love for the ocean. So if people can focus on that and not like begging people for money, like, please, will you support our endeavors? Because this is why, I think a lot more work would be able to be done, and a lot more research would be able to be supported.
Yeah. It's a great point. And to that point, boat stands for break out another 1,000, and that only gets bigger. That 1,000 only gets bigger as the boat gets bigger.
That's why I work on them and don't own them.
It's funny. I love that. Do you have another project in mind, or are you going to stick with the one?
Oh gosh. Oh, the other one that I would love to see turn into something is like, yes, of course, we have broadcast and like our like normal stations that give out science and are talking about things. But I feel like I want to like have a news station that's talking about peer-reviewed research and what's going on. Because there are so many scientists that want to share what they're doing and want to like, find someone to connect with. And sometimes people are lucky to like find their little science community that focuses on this one coral here in Rhode Island. But sometimes the community is global and you don't know who to talk to. So I think it'd be really cool to have that kind of like ESPN running of scientists, to where we're talking about that going on.
Oh my God, I love that idea so much.
Right. Anyone listening, if you want to do that, let me know. I'm in.
What is your favorite field story or stories to tell? And this could be an amazing day where everything happened and it was just magical, or it could be a day where things happened and it just makes a really great story now.
That's a tough one. There are definitely the stories that are the type 2 fun, like the stuff that was great and awesome, but you never want to have happen again. Like, you don't really want to go sailing and have like 10 to 15 foot waves and water like up to your knees on the deck of a boat. But like, everything's fine. We did it. We're good. But truly, I think most of my favorite experiences that I've had from the field have been in interacting with others and getting to see them have that like aha moment. So most people can kind of think about their own and when they were triggered into loving this, or when they had that really special connection with this aspect of nature. And I think some of my favorites have been, we would go out for like 2-hour long programs or 3-hour long programs, and we'd take 5th graders on the ship with us, which I loved. They were so fun because it was so energetic. They repeated commands. They were ready to go. And part of this, and this was when I was on a boat and we were in St. Croix. And so we take out these students that are going to school. And this was right after Hurricane Irma and Maria went through the Caribbean. And so Flying onto those islands was just looking down to blue tarps.
Mm-hmm.
And like the islands weren't fully up to like power.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of just issues that I think if you're living on continental US, like we can take for granted for big times when it comes to. And so like the schools were shut down to where only half of them are really functioning. So the schools or the students weren't getting the full educational experience. And we were working with the students to like try and fill those gaps and add into the educational experience they'd have in that year. And I loved it because we would always try to do something that was like pushing folks out of their comfort zone. So the ship I was on had a bowsprit, which is, and this is technical terming, it is the pointy thing on the end of the sailing boat. And sometimes
Pointy
they
thing
can
on
be
the front.
really big. What?
The pointy thing on the front.
Yeah, pointy thing on the front, which is called the bow. And so the pointy thing on the front of the boat. And this one was about 25 to 30 feet long. And as it goes out, it also goes up. So like where you're standing on deck, when you get out to the tip of the bowsprit, you're a little bit higher than you were when you're on deck. And also when you're on this bowsprit, there's this netting that's kind of woven underneath you. And underneath that is just water. Mm-hmm. And then you start looking back towards the back of the boat, towards the after end of the boat, and you're just seeing the boat slicing through water. It's probably one of the most peaceful places. I could hang out there for hours, and I definitely have hung out there for hours. But we would take the students out there and kind of use that as a reflection time. Mm. So like, okay, what did you like to learn about today? What has been your favorite thing? And sometimes we'd let it be quiet. Sometimes the students really wanted to talk and were so excited. And then I had this fifth grader that was like, is that Puerto Rico? And pointed to St. Croix, which Puerto Rico is not that far away. Yeah. However, we weren't that far away from land. And so I told him, I was like, no, like that's St. Croix. That's your home. And this kid was just like, wow, I didn't know it was so beautiful. And I think that that was one of those aspects of like perspective that really is stuck with me. And like, we can all take for granted things that we see regularly and that we're interacting with regularly. But when we view it from a different perspective, sometimes we actually get to see a little bit more of the beauty in it, as opposed to like the monotony and this is what I'm stuck in. And like, this is the only place I exist in. And so for that student to be able to kind of like have that experience, and for me to be able to watch it and get to like see them interact with something that they'd been living on that, you know, wasn't really providing in the best way possible. Yeah. Like it had just been decimated. Like they had gone through things that I can only fathom because I haven't had to go through it in that sense of it. And for them to kind of get to see a perspective of their home from the water and create this as like a healthy relationship, those are the moments that I think keep anyone that's working on the water and not making that much money going. Because to just create that and create that space for this young kid to potentially, you change their perspective, whether or not they become a marine scientist, whether or not they decide to work on boats, like you have shifted how they've viewed something, and hopefully for the better. Because for me and for that student in the moment, it felt like it was a really positive thing. So hopefully you're able to create those little like nuggets that push people forward into the positive light of sometimes the world can seem gloomy and like we're not going to be able to impact it in the way we want to. And like these beautiful places, flooding, burning down, storms, like Mother Nature is taking her course and we know that. But to have that moment of like faith and optimism and watching things change is really beautiful, because it kind of reminds you that we're human and we really can't control that many things. And so like it's the give up control factor, and it's that know that like what we're trying to work to protect is those that like study or in love with marine science is an inevitable factor. Like humans can be gone in the ocean, nature is going to keep persisting. Yeah. And that's important to kind of keep in check. Like we are not as important as we think sometimes.
I say it a lot, honestly. I'm like, nature will figure it out. Whether we can live in it, I don't know, but nature will figure it out.
Exactly.
So at the end of each episode, I like to leave the audience with a conservation ask to go forth and bring into the world. What would you like my audience to take from your episode today?
I want every single person that gets to listen to this to ask why. Like, question what's going on around you, because that's what science is. It's asking questions. And in questioning things, it's not like an argument. It's not like, okay, I'm questioning this because I don't believe you. It's questioning it because you're trying to expand your knowledge there.
Yeah.
So whether or not it's something that seems like your classic conservation thing, like try and skip the straw, avoid single-use plastics, like ask why.
Yeah.
Because if you're asking why and you're getting information on why it's important to do that, then you're learning a little bit more to where you have a better understanding of it. So next time someone is brought up with this and they ask why, you can add to the conversation and maybe someone else can. And even with things that, like with things that you agree with and things that you don't agree with, I think asking why is fundamental for folks to grow their knowledge base in any topic. So yeah, of course I'm pushing to like get by the water and ask those questions and see how your impacts make a difference. So how does your purchasing make a difference? How does, oh my gosh, it can go so many different ways. And I'm almost like flabbergasted to try and narrow it down, but just continue to ask why, continue to think about things with a scientific mind, knowing that some things don't have an exact right or wrong answer. Some of them are like a growing answer and a growing understanding of knowledge. And so you get to learn, you get to not know everything, and you get to add to your value as an individual with the knowledge that you have.
Yeah. One of the things that actually the first thing that popped into my mind when you said ask why is small children. I have two little girls, but if anybody has spent any time around a small child, they're scientists, and it really shows you how the curiosity is innate. And like we're all born scientists. We're all like examining things, like, putting things in our mouth to see what it's like,
We've all been there.
One of my daughters still does that. But the number one after no, after the toddler phase of no, it's why. And we will ask why like 5,000 times a day. And sure, like sometimes it gets annoying, but for the most part, it's like, well, that's, let's dive into this. And sometimes it's things like, why do we have to brush our teeth? And sometimes it's very repetitive. But if we continue to keep that with us, right, and like channel that inner child and that inner scientist of like, okay, well, really, why is that? And approach it from a place of curiosity. I think people, one of the things that you kept bringing up this episode that I really liked was it's okay not to know, right? And so if you yourself are like, well, I'm comfortable with being like, I don't know, and having that own like confidence in yourself of being like, we can figure it out, or like, I know other things. It's okay if I don't know everything. I think you feel more comfortable asking the question why, because you don't feel like you're putting somebody on the spot. You're like, well, they'll either know or they don't, and that's okay. But like, why?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I know there's data somewhere, but I'm not quoting any of it because I don't have values and I don't have it on hand. But like the asking why decreases exponentially with age.
Yeah.
And
I believe that.
even in like women, it decreases a little bit faster. And so like if you keep that openness to asking why and to understanding it, like you get to kind of like feed your brain. You get to feed that inner curiosity, and everyone needs a little brain workout every now and then. It's not just about staying like physically healthy and moving, but like you got to keep your brain active. And this is the best way to do this. So, I'm sure everyone can kind of understand that there are bigger decisions happening on this planet that have an impact on the environment and have an impact on us as individuals.
Yeah.
And you have to ask why, because it's not a two-sided thing. Like there are multiple sides to these conversations. And when you are open to understanding those multiple sides, you just get a better understanding of it. And also you're able to engage with people in a more productive way, as opposed to I'm right, you're wrong. Like keep that open-mindedness going by asking why. That's the best thing you can do to understand why little environmental movements in your area, whether they're in the Midwest or whether they're on a boat, like, or on the coast, like it's the easiest way to kind of see how you can make steps in a positive direction.
Yeah. And there's always more than one answer.
Oh, yeah.
Except in math. I'll give math that. But like, but in almost every other thing, there's more than one answer. There's more than one solution. There's more than one way to get to where you need to go. So asking why helps you get there. So that's a great ask. I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If listeners want to find you, connect with you, learn more about you or your work, where's the best place to do so?
I have an Instagram page, and I think it's Holly R. Burr, Burrr. Yeah, that's what it is. And so that's where I generally will post more about work-based things as they come up. I don't post often, but I have it. So if you ever have any questions or you think about this podcast and you're 7 years later, like by all means, come back, send me a message. I'm more than happy to connect and answer questions, have a conversation, go from there.
I love it. Well, Holly, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really enjoyed our chat.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Have you ever wanted to explore the underwater realm but are unsure about how to get dive certified? I've got you covered. With efficiency and a dash of humor, my ebook, Scuba for Beginners, takes what you need to know to get in the water and distills it down to easily digestible chunks. In it, I cover the gear you need to actually get dive certified, decode which dive agency is best for you, and the number one thing to look out for when you're getting certified. As an added bonus, the guide includes tutorials on skills you'll learn during the certification process and the secret to getting certified in 2 different places. Scuba for Beginners will leave you confident in how to become certified and ready to dive in. Scuba for Beginners is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and my website, caragracemusia.com. Just click the link in the show notes and get started today. Thank you for listening to today's show. I'd love to hear any insight you've gleaned. Leave a comment in the show notes or send me an email over at caragracemusia.com. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a review and, of course, share with your friends. If you want more resources for creating a life of purpose and meaning, plus personal insight from me that I just don't share anywhere else, join me at caragracemusia.com and sign up for email updates. Keep after your dreams and making waves in your community. One person can make a difference. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time on the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast.